Welcome to Stampscaping 101. We are doing a slimline rainbow holographic paper. This paper has come up as something pretty reasonable in terms of price with the, I don't know, whoever discovered it at Michael's, bought it on a buy one, get one 50% off. The package would be $4 each for 25 sheets of 8.5 by 11, making this piece, oh, I don't know, with tax about a dime, maybe. And I think that's a pretty reasonable price for this type of, I don't know, I think it's some pretty visually striking paper. Okay, we're going to be stamping the Aurora Borealis curtains, okay? I don't know if I need to really wipe the edges like that, but dabbing off the edges like this kind of gives a sky imagery, a little bit more of a graceful transition into the surrounding area, making it easier to blend it into the surrounding area. So I usually just recommend kind of wiping off some of that perimeter just to expedite the process of that kind of blending process here. Okay, this is mostly going to be sky because I want to do some, or I want to try some reverse stamping into this scene. And I'll show you what I mean by that if you haven't watched the ink lifting process. Okay, so that is a fairly delicate image right there, okay? But, and it's made even more so by the fact that this surface here, this paper, is really quite dynamic, so what we'll do is we'll bring it out by the use of some additional tone. Okay, so that should be really fun here. I love doing this, but it does have a different feel to it, so if this is the first time you've done this type of process, you'll have to kind of get used to it because you're stamping kind of wet onto it's a dry surface, but what you're doing is you're applying kind of an oil-based ink onto the surface here. Okay, now what I'm doing here is I'm applying this on here, and see these kind of little wispy types of formations within the design. See, this one's the main one coming up like that. What I'll do is I'll kind of define that a little bit more by toning in and carrying this. Normally, I'm not working on, we're not working on such a huge area of the sky like this, so it's usually a quarter-page card, so it'd be like this, so that, takes up the a large portion of it. But here's what you want to do. You want to kind of, I don't know, just go along with the that arc there. I mean, you can do it in many different ways, but what I'm doing is I'm just kind of defining that so that we'll have that big kind of looping, or I don't know, arcing kind of movement to it, visual movement. Okay, but what I was mentioning in terms of this ink is that this ink, as you apply it down here, this pigment ink, remains wet for the duration of the card, if you don't heat set it, during the process, which we'll probably do too, so, but not right now. So sometimes when you're applying this ink, because it is wet, you want to find kind of the right touch. Now, it's not super delicate, where it's just like, that's too much and that's too little or something like that. But if you find that you kind of wipe it like that, you're wiping ink off of the surface, so, you have to dab into it. But if you dab too much, maybe you're pressing your finger in there and you're removing inks. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know, I'm not being very delicate now. And, it depends on kind of how much ink you have on the applicator, too, how much ink's on your pad. But you'll get the feel of it, okay? But it does feel kind of weird. It feels weird for me still. I'm used to applying inks onto cardstocks and whatnot. By the way, everyone kind of refers, hey, can I use regular cardstock on it? Talking about, matte cardstock and glossy cardstock. Glossy cardstock is regular cardstock. It's probably more common than matte cardstock, in fact, in the printing world. Anytime you see like book covers, posters, calendars, business cards, it's usually on glossy more than it is on matte. It just has more impact and whatnot. But this is more akin to like a glossy cardstock here. Okay. In fact, I think this is a foil here, but I think they call it foil cardstock or something. I don't know. It was something like that on the packaging. I don't know that this is really a cardstock though, because I don't know. It seems like strange if this is really coated in a clay, and it might be. Maybe that's what they have to print. Whatever that holographic characteristic is on there. However they get that on there, I have no idea how they're doing it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it has to have somewhat of a coated surface before that is applied. I don't know. It's interesting stuff, and I'm glad that it's available. Okay, so what I'm doing is, I think I'm going to bisect this swatch here. It's almost a little bit too much here, so I'm going into it. Now here's what you have to get used to, too. So I don't like that big blob there, but that's not what I'm going to be working with, though, okay? You have to kind of get used to the idea that you can remove that. So what you're looking at normally when you're working on most types of techniques is that when you apply something, that's what you get. That's what you have to work with. It's set, right? But on this one, it's malleable, so I can remove. So I'm kind of overdoing it here. I don't know about quite a bit. Not really quite a bit, but you could go quite a bit because you can remove as much as you want. But I am applying a lot more than what I think I'll need, okay? I had to kind of get used to that too, and I'm still getting used to it. Like I might not want to do something, but I have to remember that, this will just wipe right off if I want to, right? Okay? So I'm going to utilize that to my benefit here. And it's the fun part because you can really kind of play around with things a lot more so than most types of techniques that we'll, ever be doing. If you're working with alcohol inks, you can kind of use a clear alcohol, you can use a blending tool, but I don't know that people are removing things like to this degree here. And you don't have to remove things, you can just apply, and that could be done too, but I don't know, I see this as more of a, I don't know, kind of a circular technique where you're adding, then you're subtracting, then you're adding some more, then you're subtracting, you know what I mean? And then you can do that all the way up until the end, provided you don't heat set. So once you heat set it, it's pretty well set on there, okay? Alright, so anyways, this is going pretty interesting. I'm doing a dabbing technique right here, but you can also do kind of a wiping technique. When you're wiping, though, you're kind of removing, but you can kind of work that into the movement or whatever, the look that you're going after. You can work that into the your process if you want to. Alright, so that's kind of the general gist of it right there. Looks kind of like a decent Aurora Borealis look to it. It doesn't have any of the hanging curtains though, so I have that kind of hanging curtains thing drawn into. See those kind of lines coming up in the details there? We're going to do that all the way throughout all these, okay? And I think that's going to be the really fun part about it. Most of you have some kind of paintbrush or something like that you can use. I don't know, you can even do it with a paper towel or a sponge or something like that. But I'll show you what I mean, when we get to that. Okay, so I'm going to stamp this Lakeside Cove down here. That'll be the main image in this area. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Right. I often have to re-ink this, but let's see if I have enough ink on there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I had to re-ink a lot more often. That seems like it has a pretty decent amount. I haven't re-inked this in a while. A while for this type of pad is like a couple weeks, but I don't know. This pad had been sitting around for years, and it was kind of dry. So I don't know. Maybe it just needed that kind of initial, I don't know, incorporation of the, the wet media throughout that. Okay, so I'm going to wipe off this bottom part a little bit. I don't know if like I said, I don't know if I really need to do that on this type of process right here in Service, because I'm going to be applying a lot more ink right over the top. Okay, I'm going for this area right in here. There's like an inch right here of leeway. All right, I'm going to aim that for right in here at the base of this. Okay, so it's not like, oh, that's off, oh, that's off, and that's just right, or something like that. You have plenty of space to play around with here. It's like an inch, a variation, and that's what Stampscapes is about. It's about, plenty of leeway in terms of your placement, so that you don't have to do super careful types of like jigsaw puzzle arrangement placements of stuff. Okay, so making sure that ink is transferring. I don't know if it's transferring or not a lot of times when I'm stamping like this. Okay, that looks pretty good. Over here it didn't stamp as well because that's a little bit wet. So I was stamping wet into wet, and it kind of creates a little bit of a vacuum or something. And then when I pull it off, sometimes the ink is remaining on the stamp in that area because I was stamping it onto a wet surface, a wet, oily surface at that, because these are oil-based inks. So, I mean, you could heat set that. But is that going to matter in the end result? I don't think so. All right, so this is wet right down here. So as I tap this in, I mean, it might be a good idea to heat set this, because as I add this additional tone over my wet image here, okay, it could kind of eradicate the image a little bit. It's like wiping it off, okay? But, like I said, I don't think that's going to matter. I'll be, a little bit careful around it, okay, if I want to retain what I have down there. But like I said, I don't think it'll matter too much. Okay, so here I am adding this, but notice where I'm kind of just dabbing this around at the base of this right here, of the rocks. So I'm just kind of taking in, I'm not tapping the whole thing, I'm kind of tapping the edge. I kind of have it at an angle. So you can kind of get some detail in there, but see how that kind of anchored this image onto the surface now. It's because I've added some shadows down here. I've added way too much over here. That's a big blob of kind of black ink there, but we'll try to blend that in here too. Remember, that's just not, it's not dry, so I can just kind of blend it out. And see, I've kind of taken some off right there. It's a little bit blobby, but it's the most forgiving, or one of the most forgiving media to surface combinations, because it is still wet. So I'll just come in here and I'll put some streaks right back in there. All right, so again, it's kind of a mindset. You have to kind of remember that as you're doing this, if you get something that you don't like, just say, I'll take care of that in a bit. I'll remove it. It's almost like erasing. It's almost like you have an eraser, but you're using pigment inks, which is kind of a bizarre kind of notion. All right, so if you want to do a little bit of a kind of reflection maybe in the water, I'll try to go with it a little bit like this. Let me see, it's going like this, I guess. It's not going to be an exact mirror. I don't know. I'm not going to get it that perfect. You can go roughly about like so. Okay. I don't know. Looks okay to me, like that. See, I kind of did that right there. Yeah, that water looks a little bit too... it's standing out a little bit too much here. Yeah, let's take that out a little bit more. That. It was a little bit too light down here, so I want to darken it a little bit, so that the attention is more in the sky area, you know. And that should be the kind of the focal point of the scene, I believe. Okay, so knocking that down a little bit more. If you add too much, you can take it off, you know, too. If I didn't like this whole thing, I can take like a cotton ball or paper towel and wipe this entire thing off in here, and it would come right off at this point in time, believe it or not. I don't want to do that, but you could. Okay, so that is that. Kind of like electric, you know. All right, here I have a little paintbrush. Well, this is a kind of a big paintbrush that I've never used anymore. It's a flat Eterna Brumbacher bristle. It's a flat one right here. This one's pretty good for my usage here. I never use this. I have no idea what this is probably, I'm sure it's one of my student year paintbrushes. But it's been sitting on my desk along with all kinds of other media. Okay. All right. Here, let's zoom in a touch here. I always forget to zoom out. I really apologize for my horrible camera work. I guess I should leave it zoomed out actually and just take care of that in post-production, but I don't like doing too much in post-production on these videos. Okay, so see this, I'm kind of just doing a little bit of a wipe like this. I'm not going like that. I'm just kind of generally doing a little nick like that, okay? See, I'm kind of going like this, all right? Just barely touching it. I'm not touching it with the full touchdown and lift, okay? It's just barely touching it, so. And then we can do these little, can you see that? There. Like this, and I'll do the top portion. I think. See, I'll take some of this, and I'll go into this other one. You know, the curtain up top. Now this is going to look too extreme, but what I do is I do this, and then I go back and I blot out some of these lines that I'm putting in. So like I said, circular process. It's not just doing one thing, then going to the next, and you're done with the previous thing that you did before. You'll go back and do that again. There's this other one down here. Okay. Trying to keep it fairly vertical, I don't think I want to go this way and then this way. You know what I mean? Something like that. I'm not really good at this either. I've just done this like one other time. So it looks like, I don't know, it looks like too hairy right now or something. That's where going back into it really helps with the with some additional tone. Now let me do some vertical downward swipes too. I think won't do too much of that. I think it looks better kind of up top there. All right, let it come down in this area a little bit more, and then we can come into this one down here, this light. Okay. All right, I can try it like this too. Maybe. I don't know. Doesn't seem like that's doing anything. Kind of working like this kind of cuts into that a little bit more. Alright, I don't know. I'm not exactly... Looks like when now I go like that, some of them are kind of leaning a little bit at an angle. Alright, let me get some of these straightened out. I have all that kind of right there. That's kind of interfering a little bit, so... Let me go down like this. I'll sweep some of that off. Yeah, that seems to be working pretty good. It's kind of mellowing out that area right there a little bit. You kind of have to wipe off like this periodically so that, you know, you're not dragging all that extra ink into those areas. But like I said, I'll show you what I do about that here. I haven't done this enough to where this is like a technique, you know? It's just kind of like a, I don't know. It's definitely an exploration. Hey, this works pretty good too here. Maybe this works better. I don't know. Maybe both. Okay. All right. So anyways. Okay, so what I do is I take just a dry cotton ball and I'll kind of clean some of this area up in here a little bit where it starts to look really smudgy. It's going to look smudgy. I don't know, unless you might be better at it than I am or have a better touch. Okay, but it definitely looks smudgy to me at I'd say at one point in time. I don't know, maybe through the entire process. But then it all kind of comes together in the end. Okay, let me take a dry paper towel. Here's my tool here. And I'll clean this area up a little bit more. Okay. It's still not, you know, totally integrated, gracefully integrated. Alright, but that's where I find that the additional black ink over that kind of brings it together a little bit more. And then maybe one more swiping with this. It kind of layers it too. You don't have to think, oh, okay, I'm just eradicating what I did before. By going over this, what you're doing is you're making those kind of streaks a little bit darker is all. Okay? So we're not, okay, now watch when I go over it. With this, I'm not trying to get rid of them, alright? I'm just trying to make them look a little bit darker, okay? See that like that? Down here, come into these right here. These lines. It might make them a little bit more varied too, which is good. So you get some streaks that are kind of lighter and some are darker. You can kind of refine some of these lines a little bit. I'm coming down into this one, down below here. I forgot my post-it note. I need to put a post-it note on the underside of this so I don't have to touch this on the edges. You can just grab the post-it note. Someone mentioned that to me, and it's a great tip. But I forgot it. I forgot my post-it note here. You know, I could go get one, but I don't feel like stopping. Okay, so working that. See, now it's starting to look better to me. A little bit more. I wouldn't say cohesive. It's more graceful. A look here. I can still see all my kind of scratchy, you know, swipes with the paintbrush in there, but they're just not as extreme. Okay, now that up there needs some addressing. I think it still looks too much there. That's actually perfect right there. Kind of knocking down this curtain back here a little bit. I'm just making it a little bit darker than this other one. Again, for variation. Just like that. Let's darken up this one right here, maybe. I mean, So I'm not darkening it up by a lot. I'm not doing like a big slathering of, you know, black ink in there. I'm just kind of doing a little bit. Let's come into this one too. A little bit, and maybe an area of it. Okay. I need to get up into some areas where you can see the northern lights. I've never seen them in person. Love the night sky, and I don't know if this would be like the you know, the most striking version of it. Could be, for all I know, from photographs that I've seen. They're kind of like time exposures, but I don't know. They sure do look dramatic. When I first saw a photograph of one, I must have been in high school. I thought it was unbelievable, but I didn't even know it was real. I was like, what the heck? Big green one, you know. In fact, I should do this on the green foil sometime. Maybe that's too dark of a green, maybe, but okay, yeah, look at that. How's that look? Now, see in here? See, there was kind of my brushwork in there. It was too extreme, but then you just kind of tap over it with the black ink again. And doesn't that look better? Okay, now, we did that, but now, see, let's come back into it with this again, and let's see if we can just kind of bring out a little bit more here and there. This. It's kind of like scratch art, you know, where you're removing some black. Black and revealing light underneath. Okay. All right, so I have that in there. It looks too scratchy to me, you know, every time I do that. That's why I've come back. I come back in here and do this. Okay. It's almost like a scratch put on metal, you know, with this foil. I don't know. I guess foil is metal, right? Do we put some of this down here too? I guess we could, since it's, you know, a little bit of or a lot of a reflection. Okay. Like that. I'll just make it a little bit. Okay, I'm kind of blend it in. Okay, now I'm looking for a quote. I want to put a quote right in here, I think. Or do I? It'd have to be kind of a narrow quote stamp right in there. I can do a reverse impression of it. I've been wanting to try reverse impressions on the holographic. I've done it with a butterfly, but I want to do reverse text impressions in here. Let me give it a try. If I don't like it, we can just, you know, we can just tone that black right back in with the black. All right, so let me go find an appropriate quote for this scene. Okay, love must be a light, as much a light as it is a flame. I just used that on another scene recently, but I don't know, it fits right in here, I think. Talk about a light, that's quite a light there. Last time I used it with a lighthouse, I think, right? Can't remember. But this is the weirdest thing. You know, getting ready to stamp something and taking everything off of it, like the ink off of it, you know, to stamp on here. So we're doing some dry stamp lifting, okay? And let's just go about like this, and this kind of fits right into this space too. Okay, so just, you know, your traditional stamping here. You want to get plenty of pressure. Alright, and the ink on the dry rubber hopefully will lift off. If it doesn't lift off, we'll just, I don't know, we'll take another crack at it here. Oh my god, that is one of the cleanest impressions, you know. Look at that. The E could have come out a little bit better, but look how beautiful that impression is with that lifting. So, I mean, that is really, it's really taking advantage of the slow drying aspect of it. So what makes that kind of weird to apply, because the ink just stays wet for as long as you're working. Now, I'm not going to let this set out for 3 days and try to come back and do that, you know. I think this will be dry overnight. But, you know, it probably takes a little bit of time to dry, but look how we can do that reverse impression in there. It's really a formidable, I don't know, whatever technique that you can apply to your, I don't know, whatever process when working on something like this. It just works out great. Let's do that same type of thing down here, okay? Let's take my reed stamp down here, and we'll do some reverse impressions down here. We'll do some reverse, but then we'll also do some positive down there, okay? So hopefully we'll create a little bit of depth with this technique right here. I'll go like this. Now, where there's very little ink, you can't really see it, but just like that, and I'll go like this, all right? Let's take a look at that. We have some reverse impressions down here. Okay. You can see where there's very little ink in here. You're not lifting anything, so there's nothing to see, right? Okay, so we have that. And then I'll take my black pad and I'll do some positive impressions. I'm going to try to skew this a little bit so I'm not stamping exactly on the reverse impressions. I want to kind of offset it a little bit so we have some reverse impressions in addition to the positive impressions. Okay, so we have black on background and reverse into the background too, and hopefully that'll create a little bit more depth. Okay. Alright, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so see that right in there? So it kind of creates a little bit more depth. You have the white and black within that space, like that, like so. Alright, so that to me, I have this down. We've done all these different types of things. We go back to our black. Circular process, and plus I'm kind of removing some of the ink with my finger, having to kind of touch that, so doing a little touch-up right here. You know, if there's any area that you're still working on your card, this area is set, you don't want to do anything more to it, you can heat set it, you know, during your process. Okay, and here's what I like to do too. Now that I have these stamped out down here, I'm going to add a little tone. Maybe I'm going into some of that reverse reed and making it a little bit darker, but I can still see it down there. It's just, you know, not as light, okay? It's just like these curtains up here, you know. You can kind of tap into them, you know, so they're not quite as light, but they're still there, but they're just a darker kind of brush swipe or whatever. Okay, so adding this in here. Adding a little bit here and there. That Aurora Borealis curtain worked pretty good. Okay, so this is what this looks like down here now. All right, so let's go into this. Let's heat set it. Okay, I'm going to do add some stars up here, but let's heat set it. I don't know if I'll heat set it entirely. I just want to get it, where it's not just wiping off easily. Kind of keep your heat tool kind of moving a little bit. Sometimes I don't do that, just to kind of expedite the process. But it is a better idea to kind of not have it sit in any given area for too long. It's almost like embossing. You can watch it, you can kind of tell when it dries. It dries kind of in a matte finish from a wet, oily, glossy look. That's completely dry, but I just wanted to get it kind of generally dry. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's pretty dry in most of the areas, though. Okay, now let's get this kind of counter bowed or whatever when it starts to dry. Under that heat, it really starts to kind of curl on me. But it's easy enough to kind of uncurl it in this paper. I'm someone that's generally a little bit more of a, I don't know, I favor kind of thicker cardstocks, but when it comes to this one, I don't know, it uncurls easily because it's so thin, I think. I don't know. Okay, so anyways, let's take a look at this. I don't know if you can tell, but see, it's just a little bit more matte in terms of the finish now. I don't know, it's not too bad though, huh? Okay, so let's add some stars up here. I'll go with my Dr. Martens. This is kind of my newer bottle here. Okay, I'm going to put some of this right on the tip right here. I usually just wipe this off, but why waste it? Okay, wipe that off. It might be too thick. I might need to get a little bit more paint in it. Okay, so the paint is like right just there in the tip, okay, like a diagonal application of the tip right there. And then we'll get a lot of that out of there, to the point where it's really not even dripping and there's just kind of loaded in there. See, it's not, there's nothing coming out. It can get tricky though, so be careful. You don't want a big blob on your piece, even though you can just wipe it right off. Who wants to do that repair work if you don't have to? Okay, so I'm generally going to start up here in the sky, so let's do that. Let me do it this way so I can kind of, I don't want a bunch of stars in that text right there because that would kind of, I don't know, the readability of that would get confused because we don't want a bunch of like eyes or periods, in there, okay? All right, so here we go. See, as I'm not going right above it, I'm kind of going off to the side, so if it drips, it's dripping down here, okay? I need this a little bit, I need this a little bit thinner. I think I've been going too thick or something like that. It's not blobbing out on me. All right. Going for a little bit of a thinner application, I think. So just get the consistency you want. Do it until you get what you want, you know. Add a little bit more. I would say, you know, keep it a little bit thicker than thin, because you can always add water, but it's hard to kind of take it out. But if you add too much water in there, what you do is you just mix the paint further down into the bottle. Okay, you know, and reconstitute more of it. Okay, here we go. Covering up, applying out like that. Yeah, there we go. See, I'm getting some variation there. Okay, so I needed to thin it out a little bit in this case. Right. So I have some kind of, you know, slightly larger dots, as well as some kind of thin spray. Yeah, that's about it, you know. Let me try to get a couple right there. I'll refine it too with my white paint pen. Okay. Like I can put a few dots around that one, so I don't have to get like super close. I guess I can do that. Actually, that worked pretty good. Okay, let's get some down here. Cover that up just in general. I'm going to get some of this over the top of my reeds. That's fine. Yeah, it's not supposed to be snow, but it won't be so extreme. Remember where I said I got real blobby right down here? You know, a couple little dots of white paint kind of blend that out a little bit too. Okay, so let's take a look at this, and I'll show you what the benefit of a kind of spray splatter painting does. See those, that variation in there? I mean, some of those dots are really, really tiny. Okay, it looks really busy like that, right? But this is looking at it at arm's distance right here. It's not like so extreme, right? Okay, but look at this right here. So you can do this with the white paint pen, and for a lot of years, you know, I did. But this is just kind of, it's an instant kind of texture, and it's full of variation. There's a little bit larger dot, there's smaller ones, you know, medium ones in there, and whatnot. Okay. All right, let's see what we have here. Yeah. The heat setting in the past, I didn't heat set so much because I was worried about the kind of integrity of the holographic look, you know. But, I don't know, heat setting I think looks pretty good. This paper from it's Michael's, but it's, what is it? Is it Recollections or whatever the brand? It's mellower of a surface, you know, so you get that little bit, I don't know, it's almost more kind of pastel-ish than the hot, super hot mirrored look right here. See this right here? See how much more intense this one? This one's the chrome coat, but I don't know, that one looks pretty cool too. I like them both. One of them, to me, the extreme one, you have to kind of tame because it's just so kind of crazy in terms of the super hot colors. But all right, I'm looking. Where's my toothpick? I'll just use something else. All right, I have a little pin here. This is just like that other kind of wide tip thing, which I never use. So I have my pin here because sometimes that gets clogged, and I just have my pin there. I can poke it down and kind of get that dried bit of glue out of there. Before, when I was doing this, I had to kind of, it's like, where's my pen, you know, every time, so. Alright, this isn't any kind of specialty glue. It's the one that I happen to have, you know, that was sitting around probably in my desk or crafting area for probably 10, 15 years. It's probably more like 15, on the 15 end of it. Okay, let's see here. Let's go for I was going to say, let's do a constellation. I hate to keep doing Orion, but it's so... Orion is really distinct. It's like these three stars, kind of pretty dominant. And they're kind of all in a row like this. I'm not looking at a picture of Orion right now. I'm just kind of winging it. So any of you kind of amateur astronomers, apologize for the inaccurate placement here, but it'll do for me right now. Okay, there's the belt, there's a sword, and there's like another... I think this is at the bottom of his body or something. This. Okay, and then I'll just throw a couple kind of random stars here and there. By the way, this glue is for some crystals that I'll be applying here. We have so much space up here, literal space, I guess, but also area, you know, for this, for opportunities for some fun, you know. We'll take our jewel picker, and you don't have to have a jewel picker, but it just makes this easier to grab these things. Okay. Oh, I grabbed two. Let go. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Okay. There's the belt of Orion. When I say Orion, I'm talking about the constellation, by the way, if you don't know. My jewel picker's like extra sticky today. Alright, and then I have these two down here. There's another one up here that is out of the frame, I guess. We'll go with the kind of, this is the next size up of crystal in this multi-pack. Then these two are the same size. They're a lot smaller. And I'll just fill in with some of these extra small ones on these other areas here, other little glue areas. I have to kind of look at it at an angle to see where I've put the glue. It looks like a little glistening little bead. Here, I put some in the the curtain and some in the dark area. Where it's in the curtain, it's it doesn't stand out as much as against, you know, the black ink. Okay, let's take a look at this here. Sometimes I put I've been experimenting around with these crystals. Sometimes I put it down as a reflection down here. I don't think I like it at that though, you know, down below like that. But here's some little crystals. You see those little crystals in there? You know. See, look at that. See that? You can't even see that one right there, but it's when it captures that light, right? So we see all these crystals like that. So, I don't know, it's kind of twinkly. It's like an easy way to add light. See, there's that one right here. It's an easy way to add light into into a card without having to do like an LED kind of configuration in the background or something like that, you know, with batteries and, you know, those little foil, you know, copper tape and all that. Not that that's not awesome, you know, but, you know, it went up instantly, you know, a little bit of glue and a couple crystals. Okay, so that's my little twinkly bits right there, but let's take some white paint here and add a couple little variations in here. There's my stars, okay. Put some into your curtain and some out of the curtain. And see this, where I was a little bit more conservative about my splatter painting around my word stamp here. So I can come into it like this and get really close to it, you know, without worrying about getting any of that splatter within the word forms. All right, so this is just kind of adding a little bit more variation. It's, you know, it's a pretty bright white, light white. And come down into your area down below. Kind of group cluster a couple stars periodically, you know, so it doesn't look so evenly spaced out everywhere. You kind of dot dot dot, and then, you know, dot dot, 1 2 3 4, you know, or something like that. You can go with the smaller ones, larger ones. Kind of keep it a little bit more varied than too symmetric. Everyone wants to, when they start doing this type of thing and playing around with this paint pen, everyone kind of spaces it out like super evenly, like it's all a 1/4 inch apart. You know, I have it in me. Everyone seems to have it in them that I've ever seen. Okay, and I still have it in me to do that, so I have to kind of break out of that pattern. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of highlights on top of my rocks down here. It could be like a couple little dots. I'm putting a little bit more highlighting in the rocks that are lighter, okay? And the rocks that are in the darkness, maybe I'd put 1 dot or something like that. You know, you can put a little bit more on the rocks that are in the light, right? Because they're capturing more light. Okay, so that's what that looks like right there. See how those rocks are a little bit more dimensional that way? I'll show you what it looks like. There, you can kind of see the highlights on them now. See that? See, there's more white in this area and less. See, there's like a couple little dots on these ones right there. See that? But these ones are in the darkness, right? These ones are in the light. So I put a couple little dots out there. Really, see, there's 1 dot there and 1 dot there, because those rocks are darker. So you highlight, you light the more lit area, you know, where we've retained, you know, more of the surface of the paper. Okay, so anyways, that is it. This is a pretty easy scene. It's just, you know, we have a lot of space to cover here in terms of, you know, this big area right here. But the formatting, I thought, worked pretty good. It's a little bit more kind of in the spirit of an actual kind of northern light than I normally do with ink applications, but you know, with like dye-based inks, I always wanted to do more of these fingers coming up here. I'm just kind of curious. I've heat set this. Let me see if I can. Okay, I can. I can kind of still kind of do some nice feathery touches into this ink right here. Yeah, not so much sometime. It's not coming off up here because there's probably more ink, but you can kind of do a little bit of refinement. It looks more like a kind of a feathery kind of removal in here of dry ink, okay? Actually, it looks even better like that. It's coming off pretty nice. Nice, really soft kind of touch. almost like I kind of make these curtains kind of glow a little bit more. Anyways, I won't do too much of that, but you can kind of do that. Like, yeah, at any given time, you can kind of still play around with it a little bit. See that right in there? It's how it's real soft in terms of the removal. That's what I just did right now. All right, so anyways, Northern Lights over the cove. Fun stuff, and then this is what the colors, you know. Look at all that. That's a cool color scheme, right? And then there's warms in there too. Warms and oranges and yellows. When I go like this, you know, look at that. It's just all yellow down here. It's like really super mellow, but you know, you go like this, and some of those colors get actually pretty intense at some angles, don't they? But look at this text in here too. Isn't that fun, doing that text that way? I mean, we could have stamped it in white too, and that would have been, you know, stood out against the background, completely different, but it's kind of nice having that text kind of be a part of the surface, kind of color spirit. And then see down here, I've added, you know, you can see where I've, you know, the sponge, cotton balled or whatever, a lot of that black ink in there, kind of muting that down a little bit just so it's a little bit more muted than the sky. I think the sky is still, you know, the main focus of it. I don't know, this could have used a little bit more ink, black down here. I think it looks pretty good as is though. And then you have the reverse impressions right down here of the white. See that white in there? It's kind of subtle. It gives it a little bit more depth like that than just only black. Yeah, you can kind of see it. I don't know. I eradicated a lot of it, I guess. Okay, so anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'd recommend trying this process at some point in time because it's really fun. You have to get used to it a little bit, but it doesn't take too much. And it is, I don't know, it's one of the most forgiving combinations of surface and media that you'll ever find, because you can just wipe off, you know, while still wet, anything that you already applied. Look at those little stars in there. Isn't that fun? Okay, so fun stuff. It's like a real kind of light project in terms of actually dealing with light in some ways, even though it's still reflected light. You're just getting different versions of it in the crystals and the foil surface. All right. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notifications bell if you want, and thanks as always for tuning into the channel.